Now then folks, how you doing? It's James JT at the movies and I'm back with you for another ranking video. And this one's really long overdue, probably about, I don't know, maybe 6 weeks, 2 months ago. I took part in a video with Gareth over at Video Tasties and a whole load of us here from the YouTube movie community talking about our favourite films from the year of 1989. And I wanted to do this video quite quickly after Gareth's video, really, to sort of talk about the topic a little bit more. And with one thing and another, as I've mentioned in previous videos, time's just escaped me. And well, like I say, here we are 6 weeks, 2 months, whatever it is later, but better late than never, eh? 1989 is a year in sort of modern cinema for me that just stands out as my favourite. There are so many films that came out in the year of 1989 that I would class as some of my all-time favourites, and some of the films that I'll, sort of when you need a comfort film, I'll just go and grab it off the shelf, and, films that I could practically quote back to you, and just my absolute favourite year, when it's all sort of compiled in like I say, in modern cinema of the last sort of 40, 50 years or so. And so I wanted to make this list of my top 10 favourite films from 1989, and as I always do when I make a list now, I quote my good friend Carlino, and I'm going to have to start sending you royalty checks at this point, mate, for quoting your line, but I love it so much I use it. That it's obviously, it's not the right list, it's just my list. It's a subjective opinion, but I'd love to know your favourites as well down below in the comments. So you'll have to let me know down below what your favourite films are this year and how you might rank them as well. Let's kick things off with the number 10 spot, shall we? Coming in at number 10 for me is the film Dead Calm. Now, I really have always loved this one ever since it was introduced to me by my mate Phil. I was aware of the concept of it for years. I'd seen many spoofs on The Simpsons and, various cartoons and the like, but I'd never seen the original film. And then Phil's a really big fan of it and introduced it to me and had an absolutely fantastic time watching it. You've got husband and wife team of Nicole Kidman and Sam Neill, who are sailing at sea on their boat, trying to basically grieve the loss of their child and sort of, reconcile their relationship a little bit and just reconcile that situation. And they find Billy Zane afloat at sea, close to death, and they rescue him. And then things go from there as we learn more about Billy Zane's character. It's a really great little thriller, and it manages to keep you on the edge of your seat, even though you know all the players sort of straight away, and you know pretty much everyone's intentions. It really does a good job of sort of keeping things twisting and turning, and just, well, are they the bad guy? Are they the bad guy? Is it, what's going on here? And sort of, I would really recommend checking the film out if you haven't seen it. So in at number 10 is 1989's Dead Calm. Coming in, not far behind it, at number 9 at all. I was really sort of umming and ahhing which way I would rank these, and which would go at 10 and which would go at 9. We've got Tango and Cash, which sees Sylvester Stallone and Kurt Russell teaming up as cops that are framed and sent to prison. They've then got to clear the name against the villain of the film, Jack Palance. And it's just a typical Stallone 80s, sort of early 90s feel action thriller, but him and Kurt Russell bounce off each other perfectly. The supporting cast are great around them, obviously with the fantastic Jack Palance in it as the main villain. I really enjoy it. It's been a few years since I've seen it, and I think I'm going to have to revisit it fairly soon. But in at number 9, we have Tango and Cash. In at number 8, we've got to be excellent to each other, dudes. It's Bill and Ted. The first Bill and Ted movie. Well, do you know what? I love all three of these movies, and I know that the second and the third have sort of had negative press, but maybe that's a discussion for another time. But the original is just absolutely hilarious. See Alex Winter, Keanu Reeves play off each other absolutely fantastically. It's a great little time travel adventure, balances comedy and drama and music and just everything. It's just a great, fun, feel-good movie. And I had a lot of fun rewatching all three of these when the third one came out on DVD at the beginning of last year. It's a film that I probably come back to maybe once every couple of years, is the first Bill and Ted. Like I say, it's just a great little adventure film. You laugh along the way. It's easy going. There's really nothing, sort of too hard to think about, is there, with it? It's just a great, easy watching comedy. And that's why in at number 8, I've put Bill and Ted. Keeping with the time travel theme now, we have the slightly belated sequel of Back to the Future Part 2. So this one is it's probably the sort of the black sheep of the trilogy for me, because I mean the first one's a classic, and I have a real soft spot for the third one as well. In fact, the third one's the one I often find myself coming back to the most. But I really like all three of them, and I don't really consider them three separate movies. In fact, both me and my mate Phil, who I mentioned earlier, have both got a similar opinion that it's actually just one 6-hour long movie, and if you're ever going to watch them, you should really clear 6 hours in your diary and watch it as one. But the second one it's really clever, because it's, you know, it takes all the things that were great about the first one and then builds upon that. But not only that, but it does the sort of the time traveling within the time traveling bit, where Doc and Marty end up going back to 1955 but can't interact with the selves that are already in 1955 from the first movie, and then obviously how it all sets up the events of the third one. I remember the first time I ever watched Back to the Future Part 2. I'd seen the first one when I was a kid and thought nothing of it one way or the other, really. It was one of the many Saturday afternoon films that Dad showed me and my sister when we were growing up, and enjoyed it, and then thought nothing of it. And then one afternoon when I was a teenager, Part 2 was on, and I caught it from about, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes in, where they first just got to the future, and was hooked. But the scene at the end where Doc disappears into thin air and we don't know where he is, we think he's lost time, and then the guy from the post office turns up with the letter for Marty, and it's, you know, they're in the rain. I'm getting chills just thinking about it now. But that scene always gives me chills, and I just don't know what it is about it, but it's just absolutely fantastic. And then we get that little sting in the credits of the you know, what's coming in the third film, because they were made back to back, and yeah, I absolutely love it. Like I say, while it might be the one I'd sort of rank at the bottom of the trilogy, that still doesn't mean that I don't absolutely adore it. So in at number 7, I was going to say number 6 then, but in at number 7 we have Back to the Future Part 2. Moving into number 6, we have yet another sequel. 1989 also seems to be the year of sequels. There's quite a few in this list that we're talking about, and it's Ghostbusters 2. I'm in the minority with this, and I may lose subscribers, I may get some thumbs down, I may get some boos. In fact, I might even put them in post if I can find any in the sounds on the app that I edit with. But it's Ghostbusters Part 2, and I ever so slightly just prefer this to the original one. I don't know what it is about it, but I enjoy the introduction of you know, sort of Sigourney Weaver having the kid and sort of reconciling with Pete Venkman, and I like the romance that starts to, you know, establish between Annie Potts' character Janine and Lewis Tully, and I like the fact that they make him a Ghostbuster, and again I enjoy the villain a little bit more, and I think, you know, there's some really funny scenes to it, and it's one of those where it takes what was great about the first and builds on it for me. I do appreciate that it's not for everyone, and I know that it's sort of for a lot of people a bit of a letdown, but I've always enjoyed it just that little bit more, and that's why I put it in at number 6 on my list. We're halfway there, folks, now in at number 5. Hopefully I've not lost you. We have yet another sequel. This is Lethal Weapon Part 2. This has always been my favourite entry of the whole Lethal Weapon franchise. Again, I'm using the phrase takes and builds upon quite a lot in this listing, and it's not intentional, but it does. Everything that worked so well, the chemistry between Riggs and Murtaugh, you know, obviously Mel Gibson and Danny Glover in the first one is absolutely superb. You know, they take everything that works there, and they build upon that relationship. You know, Gibson's sort of starting to integrate with Danny Glover's family, and you can see that the pair are working together really well and really have this strong bond as the story goes on. You know, in particular the scene where Murtaugh's going to be blown up in his bathroom, and just the balancing the comedy of it with the sheer terror of the situation, that the chemistry that they have and the acting is superb. I love the villains in this, the you know, the South African diplomats, and the fact that they're always throwing around, you know, the diplomatic immunity, and obviously it leads to the fantastic resolution at the end. Well, it's just been revoked, and you know, he gets shot. I just absolutely adore it. It's a superb action film, fantastically directed by the late Richard Donner, and superbly scored as well by one of my favourite all-time composers, Michael Kamen, as well. I think Eric Clapton had something to do with some of the music as well. But yeah, absolutely love it. In at number 5 is Lethal Weapon 2. In at number 4, folks that know me might be surprised that this is as low down on the list as it is, but there are 3 films that do, just probably more out of nostalgia than anything else, pip it to the post for me. But we have James Cameron's The Abyss. I'll go back to a phrase I used earlier, as well, about, you know, it being the sort of the black sheep, and this is probably very much the black sheep of James Cameron's filmography. When you think that he's got the Terminator franchise, Avatar, Aliens, you know, Titanic being the highest grossing film of all time, and Avatar not been far behind it, or is it the other way around now? I forget. But yeah, this is one that often gets overlooked, and you can really see in this film where Cameron was sort of trying and testing out some of his ideas for later films, like, you know, the liquid effect that's in Terminator 2. He tries that with the aliens here, and there's you know, obviously underwater aliens. You know, you can see that influence all the way in Avatar: Way of Water that came out at Christmas just gone, and you know, so many different things there that this film has sort of influenced, and that he's, you know, he's, like I say, he's sort of honed his craft on. The story, I think, is absolutely superb. It's a great little sci-fi. You've got an underwater oil rig. And you know, they're underwater truckers basically, and that they're mining oil, and then the rig gets commandeered by the US government because there's, you know, something going on in the abyss at the depths of the ocean where they're drilling, and they think that it's the Russians to the Americans, but obviously we learn that it's aliens. And then there's obviously this family drama as well, that the boss of the rig is the ex-wife of the lead guy that's on the rig, and then there's the sort of the bad guys, if you want to call them. The antagonists are actually the US soldiers that get sent down there. And because they don't follow the advice of the guys that are working on the rig and living on the rig on the day-to-day basis, they end up getting the bends and the sickness and sort of going crazy from there. And then obviously we've got the aliens in the middle of it all. There's two cuts of this film. There's the theatrical cut, which is a little bit choppy, and doesn't have enough exposition in it for my money to really sell the film. But then there's the special edition that Cameron went back and finished in the early 90s, which I would say is the way to view this film. And I'll take this opportunity, and I'll get up on my soapbox to say, James Cameron, you've been promising us a Blu-ray and a 4K for years. Where is it, mate? We're sick of the DVD. We're sick of the Laserdisc. We're sick of the VHS. Bring it out, mate. We're absolutely desperate for it, gasping for this Blu-ray, this 4K. So get it out there if by chance you're watching this video. In at number 3, we have the start of Batmania with 1989's Batman. Tim Burton directed, Michael Keaton, Jack Nicholson, Kim Basinger, as the leads of this film. This film reinvented Batman, really, for modern audiences. The majority of modern cinema goers at the time were familiar with the Adam West Batman. You know, Adam West played Batman in the 60s, in the TV series, the movie that followed that, and in a couple of small revivals in the 70s and early 80s. Comics really weren't as, you know, as prevalent maybe and as popular then in the mainstream as they are now. And Batman started to get reinvented in the 80s with the likes of Frank Miller writing for the series, and that is the inspiration that was taken for this film. There was uproar when Michael Keaton was cast. They thought, how can a comedic actor play Batman? And we don't want another series like the Adam West series. We want something that's more in line with these new gritty comics that Frank Miller and co have been bringing out. Well, I think they got that and then some. The film is really incredibly gritty for its time, and shows, you know, a real different take on Batman than we'd ever seen before. Has the film aged well? Well, I do think by sort of modern comic book movie standards, it's maybe not as exhilarating or as exciting as it could be. But I do think that it holds up as well, saying that in the same breath. I think Michael Keaton is absolutely note perfect as Batman, as is Jack Nicholson as the Joker. And in fact, Jack Nicholson is my favourite Joker. I love what Heath Ledger's done, and, you know, I can see what Jared Leto was trying to go for. And of course, I adore Mark Hamill's portrayal in most animated mediums that he's in as well. But Jack Nicholson's portrayal is just absolutely perfect. There are a few things about the movie that I'm not overly keen on. Batman sort of, you know, openly killing people, I'm not a mad fan of, because obviously that's not really within the, you know, the sort of the lore of the character. And I really didn't care for the fact that they made Joker Batman's parents' killer. It all felt a bit convenient. But I love the dark tone of it. I love Tim Burton's direction. I love the supporting cast of, obviously, Basinger, whatever she's called, Robert Wuhl as Alexander Knox, Michael Gough as Batman, Hingle playing Commissioner Gordon, Pat Hingle, sorry. Absolutely great stuff. And like I say, it's a film that I'll come back to regularly, and always enjoy, even if it does feel maybe a little dated now. And that is 1989's, as all of these films are, Batman. In at number 2, we have my favourite entry of the James Bond franchise, and for the longest time this was my favourite film of all time, but actually it was pipped to the post by, funnily enough, the number one choice in this list, which if you know me you'll have already guessed. But number two is Licence to Kill. This is Timothy Dalton's second and final outing as James Bond, and this was the first time in the James Bond franchise that we see Bond going rogue and going against the orders of MI6 to go and avenge the death of Felix Leiter's wife Della, who Bond's also a close friend of, and obviously the attack on Felix as well. And we see Bond going undercover in Southern America, bringing down the drug cartel led by Robert Davi's Franz Sanchez. It's really not your typical James Bond adventure at all, and yes, all the usual beats are there, M's there, Moneypenny's there, Q's there. He does have some gadgets, the Bond theme blares out when he does something Bondian, but it was the first time that Bond had ever stepped away from that formula of unrelated pre-title sequence, gets a job in M's office, goes and, exotic locations, sleeps with beautiful women, kills the bad guy sort of thing, and all's well as, the girl giggles, oh, James, over the end credits sort of thing. This was the first time the series had stepped away from that formula, and it didn't land well with audiences at all. I mean, opening in the same summer as some of the films that we've mentioned in this list was always going to be a tall order for any film, and it's something that's happened again. James Cameron did this later again. He opened Titanic the same weekend as Tomorrow Never Dies, and Tomorrow Never Dies, pun intended, absolutely sank. But yeah, audiences just didn't care for it. The film had a troubled pre-production as well. Like, it was originally going to be called License Revoked, but they were finding that international audiences were confused with what the word revoked meant, and in particular Americans were testing in the test audiences were saying that it was reminding them of somebody's driving license expiring, and not that Bond's Licence to Kill had been revoked. So they went with the simpler and arguably more punchier title of Licence to Kill, but it meant that all the promotional material had to be withdrawn and then slapped back together again at the last minute, and then it didn't have the traditional winter release that Bond films got. They put it out in the summer, and it just absolutely had everything going against it. And it's only really with Daniel Craig's portrayal of the character in recent years that this film's got a reappraisal, and people are starting to put it in the top 10 Bond films and come back to it and going, oh, well, hang on a minute, how come we didn't get Dalton back for GoldenEye or get another adventure in between or whatever? And it's really nice to see it get that reappraisal in years gone by, but at the time it absolutely flopped. For me, this has always been the James Bond film. It's the film that when I watched it, I knew I was a James Bond fan. I'd seen, Dr. No's and Goldfingers and Spy Who Loved Me's and things before that my dad was a fan of, and thought, yeah, these are all right. But then I remember it, we were on holiday in Wales in a caravan one rainy night, and this was on the telly, and Dad's like, well, this is James Bond, but you won't have seen it like this before. And we watched it, and I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked, and from that day on, I've been the diehard James Bond fan that I am. There is an in-depth review of this film on my channel as part of my Debriefing 007 series that I did last year in the run-up to No Time to Die, so please feel free to check those out if you fancy looking at it. And I think I've rambled enough on my number two choice there, so let me bring it in to number one for you. Let's bring it home with my number one choice from 1989. So my number one choice from 1989 is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, yet another sequel on this list. This is my favourite film, not only of 1989, but as I said before, my favourite film of all time. I've always loved this film. I feel, and I'm going to use that phrase again, that bleeding phrase that I've said so many times in this list, but it is true. It takes what was brilliant about Raiders of the Lost Ark and Temple of Doom and builds on it. It hones what worked, it gets rid of what doesn't, and they bring along interesting new side characters as well. We introduce Sean Connery playing Indiana Jones' dad. We have the return of the lovable Marcus Brody and Salah as well, played by John Rhys-Davies, and obviously Denholm Elliott as well. The villains are great in it. It's just such an important film to me, is this, really. And I've talked about it before as well, but my dad, who's sadly no longer with us, he passed away a few years ago, was obviously a huge influence on the films that I watched growing up and the tastes that I've developed and acquired as a film lover. And I'll always remember the Saturday afternoon that we watched this, just me and him, that watched it for the first time, where my sister used to be a dancer, and she'd gone out to a dance practice, and Dad was so giddy to show me this film, and he's, oh, Jim, you're gonna love it. And sort of young me, sort of indifferent, it'll be what it'll be sort of thing, not really bothered either way. And within 5 minutes of the opening scenes with River Phoenix in obviously the flashback at the start, I was hooked. And then we're in the main bulk of the story with Harrison Ford, and that absolutely hooked again, and then we find out that his dad's missing, and he's going on this quest, and he's, you know, following clues, and he's treasure hunting, and, you know, can we trust these people, can we trust those people, and whatever else, and I was hooked. And it's literally got the best ending, in my opinion, of any film ever. The good guy wins. He learns something about himself along the way that makes himself a better person. You know, he's got that fractured relationship with his dad throughout it, and they heal that, and that's, you know, something that really sort of speaks volumes to me. You know, now as a grown man with my dad no longer here as well, like I said, there's something really sort of quite poignant in that. And they literally ride off together happily into the sunset. And I can't help but feel a great many positive emotions every time I watch this film. There was a time I thought I'd never be able to watch the film again because of how much it meant to me emotionally, and then when I finally did, I just found this new love and appreciation for it on so many different levels. I love it as a film, and I love what it means emotionally to me. So my number one pick for films of 1989 and my all-time favourite film ever is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So folks, I do hope you've enjoyed this list, and Gareth, thank you very much for putting the idea into my mind, mate, by asking me to be a part of your fantastic project earlier in the year. And apologies that I've not had the free time to get involved with the Batman one or the Arnold Schwarzenegger one that you very kindly extended the invitation to. But hopefully we can collaborate going forward again, because it was a pleasure to do so. Folks, as I said at the start of the video, let me know in the comments down below your favourites of 1989. Do your own list and let me know what you think of my list as well. Are there any films that I've missed out that you sad aren't there? It was such a strong year. It's actually quite difficult to put this list together. So, you know, there might be some films that aren't on here that we can have a bit of a natter about, and I'd love to do that. So get involved down below. If you've enjoyed what I've had to say, give the video a thumbs up. It lets me know that you've enjoyed it. Lets YouTube know that you've enjoyed it as well, so that you keep seeing more videos from me and more videos like it. If you're not already subscribed to the channel and this is the first time you see me, hello and nice to meet you. Please think about subscribing. It helps my channel to grow, which is great, and of course it means you'll stick around for future videos as well, so that we can get to know each other better, which would be great too. Above all else, folks, it's been great to talk to you. I hope you're all keeping well. Take care of yourselves, and I look forward to seeing you again really soon. Bye for now.